The Story of Sukha. Summary. In this chapter, Viswamitra relates this story to Rama to impress upon him, who is convinced of the unreality of the universe and the ego, as is evident from the foregoing chapter, the truth that he alone is the one consciousness, reality. Hearing these wondrous words of Rama, the heir apparent, which will relieve one from the great samsara, all those assembled in the council hall of Dasharatha were exhilarated with joy, with their hairs standing on end as if they came there to expressly hear Rama's words. Even the effulgent host of Siddhas exulted in the Akasha above. After expressions of approbation of Rama's words and copious showers of flowers, contentment had filled the hall for about 12 minutes. The Siddhas, who had been roving in the Akashas for about a kalpa with extreme pains, said thus to themselves, "We, who were laboring under delusion till now, are fortunate enough in having today drunk the sweet nectar of Rama's words and thereby purified our mind of all stains. We shall benefit ourselves with what the Munis say and attain the supreme principle given out by them." So saying, they descended from the Akasha down to Dasharatha's assembly on earth, when all in the hall rose up and advanced to meet them. First and foremost did Vashishta and Viswamitra pay respects to them, who returned the same to both. Then King Dasharatha came in for his share of respect from the Siddhas through their kind expressions on his saluting them. Then, showering flowers and kind words on Rama, who was before them, they exclaimed, "O Munis, the recent abnegatory utterances of Rama, possessed of the practice of benevolence and other qualities, are passing strange and noble in their nature. It is indeed difficult to derive happiness in this most injurious samsara, which, though created by devas, full of pleasures, is wrought with pains. True, if Rama, of supreme indifference towards objects, had longed after samsara, we may be justified in doing so. But inasmuch as we long after things hated by Rama, we Siddhas, as well as Devarshis and others, should be classed under the ignorant." Viswamitra, eyeing Rama with great love, said, "You have cognized all through yourself, through your stainless intelligence. There is nothing more for you to understand clearly. You and Muni Sukha, replete with spiritual wisdom, are on a par with one another. Even those who have acquired the matchless spiritual wisdom endeavor to attain the quiescent state." At which Rama questioned him thus, "Please, O Father, enlighten me as to how Sukha Muni, though possessing intelligence devoid of ahankara, had no quiescence of mind at first, and how he came into possession of that bliss afterwards." The Muni replied thus, "Brahmarshi Sukha, who was replete with jnana, spiritual wisdom, which, if developed, puts an end to a series of 7 rebirths at once, inquired like you into the origin of things. In doing so, he became seized with doubts as to the certainty of his convictions, and his equilibrium of mind was disturbed. But with non-fluctuating mind, freed from the thraldom of sensual objects, he approached his father, Vyasa, living on the mountains of Mahameru, and asked him for the solution of the following questions. Whence this Maya generating great pains? How does it perish? Who had it as its originator? What part of it, if any, does endure? When did all the things of the universe originate?" After Vyasa had given suitable replies to the many questions proposed by Sukha, the latter simply remarked that his father's explanation had not dispelled his doubts, he having been aware of the same before. Finding it was not possible for him to convince Sukha, his son, Vyasa asked him to apply for solution to King Janaka of stainless and supreme spiritual wisdom, whereupon he descended from Mahameru down to earth and reached the gates of the golden palace of Janaka. Though apprised of the arrival of Sukha, the Brahmarshi, he king did not go in advance to meet him, as he wished to test the newcomer's equilibrium of mind. Yet Sukha was not in the least disconcerted, and waited at the gates of the king for 7 days. Then, after being detained and tested in another place for 7 days, he was conducted to the harem in the palace, and was there sumptuously fed upon the choicest viands of 6 tastes, and treated with flowers, sandal, and other objects of enjoyment by handsome ladies of slender waist. And yet Sukha, who was like a cool, full moon, was indifferent to the dark or bright aspect of these enjoyments, so that neither the happiness arising from the enjoyments to which Sukha was exposed by the king, nor the pains flowing out of the disgrace to which he was subjected, did affect in the least the mind of this great Muni. Will ever the soft, noble zephyr be able to agitate Meru, the grandest of mountains? Observing the internal exultation of the Muni's heart, unruffled by the externals, the king saluted and eulogized the Muni, and then addressed him thus: O Brahmarshi, who has attained the highest fruit, having given up all worldly concerns, please tell me what business has wafted you here? At which Sukha questioned him thus: How did Maya arise? How does it grow? And how is it destroyed? Please, O Guru, explain them to me truly. At these words of Sukha, Janaka explained in the same manner as Vyasa did, which the Brahmarshi no sooner heard than he said, Thus had I known previously, and you gave the same explanation my father gave me. The significance of the holy sentences given out in the sacred books points only to the non-dual atman. If Maya, which originates as differentiated out of the one atman in the nature of breath or vibrations, is again merged into it, there seems not to be even an iota of benefit derivable from this perishable Maya. O Guru, who is able to remove the delusion of the minds of men, please throw light upon the nature of this incomparable real Atman. To which the king thus replied: Though you have known everything definitely, still you have asked me in spite of your father's words. The state given out by us is the real one. Atman alone is which pervades as the all-full Chitakasha everywhere. Naught else is but that. The jnana is bound by its own sankalpa. With the liberation from that sankalpa, there is freedom from the trammels of bondage. As you have clearly now cognized that atmajnana, you have abandoned all longings for enjoyments and the sight of the visibles. You have, through your all-full mind and without pains, attained all that could be got at, Brahman itself. You have commingled with that secondless principle, which is above the reach of all vision. You have become a Jivan Mukta. But there is one thing which you have yet to do, the giving up of the delusion of the Maya which has arisen in your mind, the giving up of which will entirely free you and not bar your further progress. When the King of Kings named Janaka thus initiated Sukha in the Atmic mysteries through his direct presence, the stainless Rishi attained quiescence in his Atman or higher self, being freed from the pangs of birth and the agonies of death. Then all his inquiring spirit, perplexities of mind and doubts vanished through direct self-cognition. Then, having reached the highest pinnacle of Mahameru, he went into the non-fluctuating Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and after a period of 1,000 solar years merged into the Jnanakasha. Like a light which, when divested its wick and ghee, returns back to its fount of Akashic Agni, fire. Like water drops becoming one with the ocean of waves, He, being cleansed of the stains of contemplation or thinking, merged into the secondless Brahman. The vibration that started in himself as the I, having melted away. Thus did he attain quiescence of mind free from the delusion of Maya. This is exactly the path you should follow, O Rama. The right characteristic of a mind that has known all that should be known is the non-identification of itself with the ever-pleasurable worldly enjoyments. With the proclivities of the mind towards material objects, bondage in objects becomes strengthened. Otherwise, the bondage becomes slackened, and in course of time perishes. O Rama, the extinction of vasanas alone is moksha, salvation. But the concretion of the mind in material objects through vasanas is bondage. Those persons are jivanmuktas, who have quite disabled the vasanas and are indifferent to the many worldly enjoyments without the aids of tapas, religious austerities, vratas, religious observances, and others. That one principle which Rama's mind has cognized through the utterances of the great ones is the one reality and none else. Now the only person who is able to relieve this great soul of Rama from all his doubts and render his mind quiescent is the omniscient Vashishta, who knows clearly the 3 periods of time, is the guru of men in this world, and is a witness to all things having name, form, etc. So said Viswamitra in the king's assembly. Having spoken these words, Viswamitra looked at Vashishta's face and reminded him by saying that Rama should be taught those jnana stories, which Brahma, residing in the lotus, had been pleased to favor them with, in order to put an end to the dissensions between them and liberate all the virtuous from their sanchita karma and attain moksha. Initiation into the mysteries of Brahman will fructify only in that disciple's mind which is desireless and will produce jnana, spiritual wisdom in it. This is what the Shastras, books, say, and herein lies the glory of the higher spirituality. But the initiation imparted to a vicious disciple, full of desires, will become defiled like the pure milk deposited in a sable dog's skin. Thus did Viswamitra expatiate in various ways when the unsullied Narada, Vedavyasa, and other munis assembled there, heard all of Viswamitra's words and eulogized him unanimously for his noble utterances. Thereupon Muni Vashishta, son of Brahma, and equal unto him, addressed Viswamitra thus: O Muni, well versed in all departments of knowledge, I will do according to your bidding. Whoever will go against the words of the great ones that has known really who the knower is. I will now recite the pure jnana stories meant for the non-fluctuating and the pure-minded, and given out by the lotus-residing Brahma on the Nishada hills in order to liberate them from the cycles of rebirth. Therefore Vashishta, with a concentrated and pure mind, related the following to make ajnana, ignorance, perish, and the supreme seed of all full jnana dawn in men's minds. Mumukshu Prakarana, on longing for liberation. Summary. Of the 4-fold qualifications required of a neophyte on the path, the last one, viz., the longing after emancipation, is treated of in this chapter. Vashishta said, Now, O Rama, hearken to what I am going to say. Through right endeavors in this life of the world, all the ends of human aspiration can be achieved by following strictly the shastric or scientific injunctions. Such endeavors are 2-fold. One, in the direction of Atma Jnana Shastras, or the sciences relating to divine wisdom, and the other in the direction of ordinary shastras, treating of terrestrial wisdom. The former is on account of moksha, and the latter, which is not the true shastric path, leads to bondage. Those virtuous persons only will gain moksha who have, from their early boyhood, trained themselves up in the atman jnana or spiritual lore, associate themselves with the unflinching great men, and develop benevolence and other good qualities. At which Raghava exclaimed, "Being under the control of vasanas generated by me in my former births, I have not been making efforts in the direction of the right path. O Guru, what am I to do?" On vasanas pure and impure, to which Vashishta replied thus, "O Rama of marvelous qualities, it is through one's effort alone and none else that the Brahmic seat can be mastered. Now the host of vasanas may be divided under two heads, the pure and the impure. Of these two, those alone which were generated by him in his many lives will cling to him in his future births. Should the pure ones cling to him, he will easily attain the immaculate Brahmic seat through them. But in the case of the impure vasanas, pains will be generated. You should, O Rama, even through dint of painful efforts, avoid these impure ones. Through the two ordained paths of good and evil, the current of vasanas swells enormously. May you, after straining all your nerves in the cultivation of Brahma Vidya, Brahmic science, liberate yourself from the impure vasanas, and rest firmly in the pure vasanas, appertaining to the beneficent reality. You should, through your equal vision over all and your own efforts, playfully check the lad of mind from getting into the impure vasanas and make it associate with the pure ones. If after annihilating the many impure ones which are the products of the many previous births, you should make the pure ones dawn now, then they will conduce to your future efforts. Even should any doubt arise in your mind as to what the pure ones will lead you, you should always be cultivating them only, as an excess therein is not in any way injurious. Till your mind is illumined by the reality of Brahman, you should always be following the path of initiation into Brahman by the Gurus through the sacred sentences of the Vedas. May you, O Rama, remain immutably fixed in that state of direct cognition, after purging your mind of its impure vasanas and making it, through the pure ones, attain the Atmic seat, free of all stains and pains. Destroy all your illusory thoughts so that they may not resurrect again. Develop extreme quiescence of mind and bliss within yourself, and then through your intelligence, freed from the longing after objects, you should, O Rama, commingle yourself with Brahman, engaged in the investigation of the significance of the holy sentence, Tattvamasi, that art you, and meditate upon such identity. Now listen to the utterances of Brahma seated on the honey-dropping lotus flower. Vashishta's own history, at which Raghava inquired of Vashishta the cause of such utterances when Vashishta went on thus out of Chidakasha, which is the endless, the all-pervading, the seat of all, and the illuminator of all objects, there arose Vishnu. Brahma arose out of the lotus of his heart and evolved, as so many creations of his mind, this earth and other diverse objects. Now the author of the universe, Lord Brahma, in the course of its progress, found the many noble souls in the Bharatavarsha, the portion of land including India, writhing under extreme pains, and was moved to pity, like a father towards his afflicted son. Contemplating upon the salvation of these afflicted ones, he came to the conclusion that the cycle of births and deaths cannot be arrested, by either japas, uttering of mantras, or tapas, religious austerities, macerating the body or the many kinds of gifts or bathing in such holy waters as the Ganges and others or any other means except through atman jnana. Therefore, through his stainless mind he created us all like himself with a bowl in the hand and a rosary of beads. So was I born, and having saluted him I was shown a seat on a petal on the northern side of the lotus, in which he was gloriously seated. There he pronounced a curse on my mind that it should be enveloped by Maya for 1 muhurta, or 48 minutes. Thereat my mind became stupefied, and I began to play the woman like an illiterate and ignorant person devoid of all spiritual wisdom. Observing me thus, Brahma questioned me as to the cause of my dire sorrow, to which I asked him how this samsara arose, and how moksha can be attained after freedom from existence, upon which he blessed me with a true cognition of the higher state. As its result, I was in a non-fluctuating state, owing to my cognition of jnana atman reality. Upon which Brahma remarked to me thus, "It was we that enveloped your intelligence by the base Maya and then cleansed it of Maya after having annihilated the latter. We have ordained that all souls shall be initiated by you and attain moksha after the dawning of full jnana. You shall soon go to Bharata in Jambu Dwipa, which is the land of all perishable karmas, religious works. There you shall initiate men having the 4 qualifications of attaining salvation into atman jnana, but shall initiate lovers of ritualistic karmas in whom the conception of egoism has not vanished into the due performance of such karmas. According to his mandates, I go to Bharata and live in it so long as humanity exists there. I have no longing for any objects in this world. I shall ever be in the sushupti, dreamless sleeping state, and thus be able to overstep the limits of the painful mind. Though engaged in the daily actions of the world, no actions of mine identify themselves with myself. O valorous Rama, those intelligent disciples alone will be knowers of Atman who, after thoroughly discriminating between a guru of all full jnana and another of ajnana, find an asylum in a supreme immaculate guru. Those only who understand the teachings of their gurus from all aspects, by an instantaneous apprehension of what they, the gurus, mean and at what they drive, will see them realized afterwards as in an objective vision. The stainless guru will never initiate into tattva jnana those who are weak-willed and addicted to sensual desires. The 4 means of moksha. If the 4 sentinels that wait at the gates of moksha, salvation, shanti, sweet patience or quiescence of mind, vichara, atmic inquiry, santosha, contentment of mind, and sadhu sangha, association with the wise, be befriended, then will there be any obstacle to the attainment of salvation? No. Like the waiters posted at the gates of the palace of a king protecting the earth, who allow ingress to the visitors without to see the king within, the above 4 sentinels allow admittance within into moksha. Even if one of them be befriended, then he will introduce him, the newcomer, to the rest of his fellows. Therefore you should ceaselessly endeavor to hold fast to one at least, throwing aside all obstacles that come in the way and associate with him intimately. In order to put an end to the ephemeral rebirths, we should above all develop our spiritual intelligence through association with the wise, inquiry into Atmanjnana books, and deep samadhi or meditation. The venom of the pains of samsara will be dispelled, and the man bitten will be cured of the poison. through the Garuda mantra called jnana. Then, with the development of jnana, even showers of arrows discharged at him will be to him like those of soft lily flowers. A bed of flames will resemble to him a soft cushioned bed, redolent of rosewater sprinkled in it, and the chopping off of his head will be like sushupti, the dreamless sleeping state, wherein happiness is enjoyed. The ripping open of his stomach will be like the application of sandal over his body, and the piercing in his breast of straight-pointed innumerable lancets will be like cool water sprinkled from a pump of the long summer season. The poisonous disease of sensual objects unfit to be associated with can be avoided only by those who have developed the discriminative spiritual wisdom, and not by any others. Is it not through a mere inquiry into atman knowledge that nirvanic bliss is attained? If one should conduct himself in such a way as to assimilate as one, within himself, the knowledge derived from the three sources of his self-experience, the true significance of the holy sentences in the spiritual books, and the instructions of a wise guru, then the inseparable atmic wisdom will rise in him. The mere study of rare jnana books by persons of petty intelligence will but breed ajnana in their minds. Books treating of devotion and the performance of rituals will generate less ajnana than the study of jnana books, unaccompanied by the other two above mentioned. And it should be remembered that it is far better to lead a mendicant's life by begging for food at the doors of even outcasts with the bowl in hand, than to pass a life of ajnana. Immense wealth, friends, relatives, Benares and other sacred places, bathing in the Ganges and other waters, the hermitage of munis, religious austerities afflicting the body, and other like things, are not the sure means of ever reaching the higher state, but it is through the mind's effort that the immaculate and supreme seat can be attained. Shanti. Now listen, O Rama, to the ineffaceable characteristics of the four sentinels placed at the gate of moksha. If the supreme sweet patience that naught can ruffle be mastered, then all desires and sorrow will fly like gloom before the rising sun. Being confided in and loved like a mother by the virtuous as well as the vicious, such persons of sweet patience will never be ruffled in mind, whether they get nectar to drink and enjoy the bliss of Lakshmi residing in the luxuriant lotus flower, or are engaged in great wars, entailing excessive carnage, or whether they are born or dead. They never rejoice or grieve through the enjoyment of pleasures or pains arising from sensual objects. These pure men of sweet patience will shine aloft far higher than such persons as men of mere ripe intelligence, performers of sacrifices, men well versed in all departments of knowledge, puissant kings, virtuous men, and others, not possessing this one attribute. Great men have quaffed at this ambrosia of sweet patience, which is rare for all intelligent men who long after it have attained the glorious moksha. May you too, O Rama, act in this virtuous path. Atman Vicharana. If along with this you should develop fully atmic inquiry through your subtle pure intelligence after a study of the holy shastras, then such an incomparable intelligence will reach the supreme seat. It is this inquiry alone that enables one to differentiate causes from effects and constitutes the rare remedy for the cure of the disease of rebirth. Having cleared oneself of all doubts through this discriminative power, which gets not blurred even in the midst of the intense darkness of ignorance, shines with undiminished luster even in the midst of any light, and through which all things are visible, one should always be engaged, even when threatened by dangers, in the inquiry of whence am I? Whence came this universe of samsara, and of whom is this universe an attribute? Such an inquiry averts the dangerous disease called the gloom of ajnana. Santosha. Now to noble contentment. It is the bliss arising from the enjoyment of objects, good or bad, without any longing or aversion, and the non-grief or indifference shown towards objects not obtained. Should this incomparable ambrosia of contentment become permanently settled in one, then all enjoyment of objects will become a poison to him. Then the mind, which was immersed in sensual objects, raises up its eyes towards Atmic wisdom, and sees not a distorted image as in a stained glass. Such a person of true contentment will be revered by the great tapaswins and the chief of men. Sadhu Sangha. To all those who wish to master this world of Maya, the association with the wise is the unfailing means. Like the Ganges, which yields its fruit to those who bathe in its cool waters, the association with the wise expands the poor intellect of men, transmutes the accidents arising out of material objects into a real wealth for progress, and converts a mind, which is miserable amidst any objects, into one which sees happiness everywhere. To such, neither sacrificial fires, nor tapas, nor bounteous gifts, nor holy waters are indispensable. One should, at any cost, long to approach those great personages replete with wisdom who are friendly to all, relieving them from bondage, and form the ferry to cross the ocean of rebirths. These are the fourfold means for getting rid of this oppressive samsara. Those who have intimately befriended these four have crossed the ocean of samsara. O Rama, of sweet patience and other qualities, please hearken to the stories narrated in this book, which will relieve your pining mind of its delusion. Atmajnana, the end of all Vedas, will dawn of itself in one who probes into their underlying meaning without caring for their surface attributes or meaning. All delusions such as love and hatred, etc., will vanish. The mind will become as pellucid as the waters of a pool in the autumnal season. Such persons of adamantine armor will never be pierced by the arrows of pains, such as poverty and others. The fruits of an inquiry without desires. A mind engaged in atmic inquiry will never be afflicted by the awe-inspiring Maya, and will maintain the equilibrium of a waveless ocean. All persons of excessive inquiry will acquire the depth of the unfathomable ocean, the stability of Mahameru, and the coolness of the noble moon. The virtuous who tread the path of Atmajnana will take delight only in samadhi and other karmas congenial to their pursuits, like a spotless and chaste woman who contemplates upon her Lord as God and rejoices in such thought. The characteristics of a Jivan Mukta. Then the above said rare Jivan Mukti state will gradually ripen in him who is desireless, and in whose eyes there is nothing supernatural. His state is indescribable, and yet he will move in the world like anybody else. His mind will not be bound by any longings after karmas. He will be indifferent to joy or pains arising from good or bad results. He will preserve a pleasant position in the happy enjoyment of whatever he obtains. He will not in the least concern himself with the enjoyments foreign to the path of the wise. He will ever be engaged in the ceaseless inquiry into the path of salvation which arises through interrogating the wise without transgressing their words in order to enjoy bliss uninterruptedly and be oblivious of this body. Having attained atman jnana, he will not be reborn and subject himself to the pangs of delivery from his mother's womb. Those sinful men whose minds are reeling amidst sensual pleasures, being led away by them, can truly be said to be the mere vermin generated out of the offal in their mother's womb. In the absence of the company of those great men of supreme intelligence, one should be performing those actions which fetch him food gotten through right-earned and well-spent wealth. So long as he gets quiescence in his stainless atman and the certain mental quiescence of the turiya, fourth state, dawns in him, he should ever be engaged in atmic inquiry through a study of atman-jnana books, quiescence of mind, right conduct, acuteness of intellect, and association with the wise. How can this certain and stainless turiya state arising through atmic inquiry be described in words? Turiya state. A person who gets quiescence in this turiya state, devoid of all bhavanas, thoughts, and thus crosses the ocean of samsara, will attain the seat of moksha. Such a one will never be affected by anything, whether he is in a state of jiva or shiva, devoid of the jiva state, whether he moves in a family or is a solitary recluse, whether he is bound by the delusions of shrutis, smritis, or not, or whether he performs all actions or not. He will then be in the one reality of Atman as in one vast ocean, without any intercepting object as the Himalayas. The proper path of inquiry. You may place your credence in the words of even a child, if they are consistent with the shrutis, Guru's words, and your self-experience. Otherwise, you should reject as straw the utterances of even Brahma himself. Know also that the many analogies given out in order that Brahmajnana may arise in you are for the purpose of exemplifying the one principle. The ignorant assert that the formless and real jnana is subject to no analogies involving form and name, and hence should not be made the subject of inquiry. But such a mischievous argument will only be subversive to the good results of the intellectual acumen arising from jnana inquiry. Therefore, O Rama, you should not let your mind take that groove of thought. On the development of jnana, the sound of atman-jnana will vibrate only on the strings of shanti and other qualities. Jnana and the above four good qualities shine mutually in best relief only in juxtaposition. Both these flourish well like a tank and the lotuses growing in it. Should they be developed equally, then the result will be the attainment of Brahman. But if separately, no results will accrue. A hearing of the following real stories and an acting up to them will confer on one the virtues of true renunciation, imperishable wealth, eternal bliss, the glorification by the wise, and a happy life. Moreover, a mind illumined thereby will attain moksha of immutable bliss. Upadi Prakarana, the story of Akashaja, the son of Akasha. Having initiated Rama, bent upon attaining salvation, he, having developed the first three means before, into the nature of the non-dual one, and into the endeavors that should be made in obtaining that one, to the creation of pure vasanas, and for their furtherance, the development of shanti and other qualities, Vashishta, in order that the self-cognition of turiya jnana may dawn in the prince, now continues in 4 prakaranas or chapters by stating that the consciousness reflected in the lila sankalpa of Brahman, whichever is before creation of the nature of Sat, Chit, and Ananda, is alone the origin of the universe, its manifestation, and its absorption, and that the one Chaitanya, absolute consciousness, Brahman, which contains in itself this trinity and is its seat, is the nirvanic bliss. Thus, in order to show that all is Brahman, the author in the succeeding 4 prakaranas begins with Utpatti Prakarana, or the chapter treating of the origin of the universe, or the I, comprising of stories wherein it is sought to illustrate first that all the universes, etc., are nothing but the first creations of the sankalpa of the mind proceeding from or the cosmic ideation of the one Chaitanya. Atman is this universe, jiva, etc. In the preceding chapter, we expatiated upon the regular means of mumukshus, or aspirants after emancipation, which you should adopt in order to attain moksha. Now listen attentively as to how the several universes were evolved. Our jiva, ego, is no other than the one jnana which can alone be directly cognized through one's self, and is dubbed with different appellations by different religionists. It rejoices in the appellations of Kutashta, Ishwara of agency, and the visible Chidabhasa, the distorted consciousness. It is jnana through which the jiva shines with the intelligence that manifests itself as akasha and other objects, like the vast waters manifesting themselves as waves, foam, etc. The above-mentioned jiva alone shines as the earth, and other objects through the heterogeneous illusions of sankalpas, thoughts, and vikalpas, fancies, which arise and die. The causeless Saramatra, absolute being, existing from before creation, manifests itself through its inherent lila, sportive power of creation, as this world composed of the myriad objects which are no other than our objective vision, or ideation, and rests in its own all-pervading jnana, like the fluctuating power in vayu, air, the innumerable quarters and times being but the diverse forms or aspects of the non-dual, all-pervading atman jnana, is that only from which they start. Know, therefore, through this means, that the universe, the illusory creation of Brahman, is one that has no other cause than that. Upadi Prakarana, on creation or the origin of the world. The story of Akashaja, the son of Akasha. Having initiated Rama, bent upon attaining salvation, he, having developed the first 3 means before, into the nature of the non-dual one, and into the endeavors that should be made in obtaining that one, to the creation of pure vasanas, and for their furtherance, the development of Shanti and other qualities, Vashishta, in order that the self-cognition of Turya Jnana may dawn in the prince, now continues in 4 prakaranas or chapters by stating that the consciousness reflected in the Lila Sankalpa of Brahman, whichever is before creation of the nature of Sat, Chit, and Ananda, is alone the origin of the universe, its manifestation, and its absorption, and that the one Chaitanya, absolute consciousness, Brahman, which contains in itself this trinity and is its seat, is the nirvanic bliss. Thus, in order to show that all is Brahman, the author in the succeeding 4 prakaranas begins with Utpatti Prakarana, or the chapter treating of the origin of the universe, or the I, comprising of stories wherein it is sought to illustrate first that all the universes, etc., are nothing but the first creations of the sankalpa of the mind proceeding from or the cosmic ideation of the one Chaitanya. Atman is this universe, jiva, etc. In the preceding chapter, we expatiated upon the regular means of mumukshus, or aspirants after emancipation, which you should adopt in order to attain moksha. Now listen attentively as to how the several universes were evolved. Our jiva, ego, is no other than the one jnana which can alone be directly cognized through one's self, and is dubbed with different appellations by different religionists. It rejoices in the appellations of Kutashta, Ishwara of agency, and the visible Chidabhasa, the distorted consciousness. It is jnana through which the jiva shines with the intelligence that manifests itself as akasha and other objects, like the vast waters manifesting themselves as waves, foam, etc. The above-mentioned jiva alone shines as the earth and other objects through the heterogeneous illusions of sankalpas, thoughts, and vikalpas, fancies, which arise and die. The causeless Saramatra, absolute being, existing from before creation, manifests itself through its inherent lila, sportive power of creation, as this world composed of the myriad objects which are no other than our objective vision, and rests in its own all-pervading jnana, like the fluctuating power in vayu, air, the innumerable quarters and times being but the diverse forms or aspects of the non-dual, all-pervading atman jnana, is that only from which they start. Know, therefore, through this means, that the universe, the illusory creation of Brahman, is one that has no other cause than that. The disappearance of the universe with jnana. Atman Chaitanya alone evolves in a moment this universe into a visible shape. The evidences of inferences, etc., are the means through which jnana can be known. The reality of belief in the diversified visible objects constitutes bondage. Freedom from it constitutes moksha. We shall put forth to you things in such a manner as to relieve you from the attraction of all visibles. Please, therefore, hearken well to the following. At the end of a kalpa, when all the visible universes are annihilated like a dream in sushupti, there remains incomparable tattva jnana, existing by itself alone, devoid of the fluctuations of thought, form, name, and others, and without the transcendent vast darkness of ajnana, the light of vritti, or mental jnana. This supreme principle is termed by the wise, for the purpose of understanding it, satya, truth, Brahman, atman, param, the supreme, and such like, and manifesting itself as another in a mysterious manner, shines with the title of jiva. It becomes thereafter subject to all pains. Then this atman, which goes now by the name of jiva, and which is the spirit of the latter, concretes itself through the sankalpa of thought into manas, mind. It becomes manas. This ever-agitated manas, having come into existence out of the ineffable Brahman, creates the world according to its own sankalpa. This ledger domain of the universe springs out of the sankalpa of the manas, mind. The word ornament signifies no other than the gold or other metal of which it is composed. Therefore it is needless to apply the epithet golden to the word ornament. Likewise, the word universe means Brahman and nothing else. The wise apply the many epithets of the painful moha, delusion, bondage, tamas, mala, impurity, advidya, maya, and samsara to this universe which, though arising out of the unreal mind, appears as real to it, like the waves in a flitting mirage. Now, if you will hear from us the nature of bondage, then you will understand clearly moksha. The existence in man of the differences of conception of I and you is bondage. So long as this sankalpa in the visible exists, so long is it difficult for them to attain salvation. Like a tree latent in a seed, all the visibles will be merged in the seer, then without again manifesting itself. In the heart of a banyan seed as the cause, there exists the variegated differences of flowers, leaves, etc., like the marvelous potency of creation, which preserves everything potentially and then brings them out, without in the least being injured thereby. There arises out of the womb of the all-pervading principle called jnana atman a sprout, which naturally expands itself into this universe of form, name, etc. Just as the seed begins to germinate in its proper time and place, so also the seer, the knower, appears, as the visibles through the sankalpa of the mind, the visibles being no other than the seer itself. Upon hearing the adventures of him who rose out of Jnanakasha, you will easily understand the origin of the creation of this universe replete with tamas. You will therefore hear this story. Once upon a time, in the race of Brahman, there was born one Akashaja, the son of Akasha, having as his cause Jnanakasha itself. He rejoiced in the possession of uninterrupted samadhi, earnest regard towards all creatures, and good dharmas, or virtuous actions. Having seen him live for a long period, Kala, time, soliloquized to himself thus: "How is it I am not able to encompass this one when I am able to devour the whole universe as a mere paltry trifle? My powers are such as to annihilate everything. I am led to infer my powers have been much dulled of late, like the blade of a sword in poison. Persons of determined efforts will never abandon their pursuits." With these cogitations in his mind, he at once marched straight to the habitation of the Brahman, Akashaja, and entered his gates when he was bedazzled and scorched by the intense glory of the Brahman's spiritual fire. Nothing undaunted, Kala pierced through the spiritual glory, and with his tall and stalwart arms, 1,000 in number, seized hold of the Brahman, but was disappointed in his efforts as he was too much for Kala. As Akashaja was immovable like one of the forms, aspects of Sankalpa, divine will, Kala was unable to overpower him, and so returned from that place to go to Yama, or god of death, and consult him. To Yama, Kala related all that had happened between him and the Brahman. The advice of Yama, at which Yama said thus: "This universe which arose through karmas will perish through karmas only. The weapons with which we can wield the destruction of the universe are the former karmas. Therefore try to take hold of those karmas in the life of the Brahman, through which means you will be able to overpower him." Hearing these words of Yama, Kala fished about for the former karmas of the Brahman in different places, such as the holy waters, tanks, the sphere of the earth, quarters, and others. But nowhere was he able to discern any in spite of all his tedious search. At last he returned and disclosed to the wise Yama the fruits of his vain search. Thereupon Yama deliberated for a long time and delivered himself of the following words: "Born as he is out of the pure Akasha, this imperishable Brahman is no other than Jnanakasha itself, and as he has no cause, instrumental or material, he cannot be said to perform karmas, though performing them. There being really no cause at all, the karmas he performs do not really exist. The sanchita karmas, past karmas in latency, which will enable you to put an end to him, do not exist in his case. So said the fulfiller of Dharma's laws, namely Yama, at which the noble Kala quietly betook himself to his own place in great wonderment. At these words of Vashishta, Raghava, having eyed him, said thus, "From the story given out now by your reverence, I am led to conclude that the son of Jnanakasha is no other than Brahma, the self-created and the non-dual of the nature of Vijnana." Thereupon the immaculate Vashishta said thus, "We have known thus the words which passed between the havoc-producing Kala and Yama. We shall describe still further what took place between them. When at the end of a Manu, the never-idle Kala, who had swallowed up all the universes, rose up, he tried to overpower even Brahma, as stated before. Then the lofty Yama delivered himself of the following words to the grieveless Kala: "Will that thought of yours fructify which aims at destroying the incomparable Brahma that is of the nature of the stainless and matchless Brahmakasha, or Jnanakasha alone? The indestructible Brahma shines like the above-mentioned Sankalpa Purusha of the form of pure Akasha alone, without being composed of the elemental forms. It is the self-existent Parabrahm only, which is Chidakasha itself, alone and without beginning, middle, or end, that manifests itself as true, like one having a body of dimensions or an eternal Purusha. But it really has no form and is unreal, like the son of a barren woman." So said Yama to Mitru, or Kala. At these words of Vashishta, Rama lifted up his eyes and questioned him thus: "While all souls possess two kinds of bodies, viz. the lasting Adivahika and the temporary Adhibhautika, how comes it that Brahman possessed the former subtle body alone?" To which Vashishta said thus: "As all the jivas have two causes, Brahman and the universe, due to Brahmic light, they have two kinds of bodies. But is Brahma, who is not separated from Brahman, has no other cause than Brahman. He has the one Adhibhahika body alone. Then, as his universe is nothing but a mode of the mind self-evolved from Brahman, the cause of the universe, hence this all-pervading world is but consciousness itself." So said the Muni lovingly, when Rama asked to be enlightened as to why this illusory universe is but a mode of the mind. The mind-creating universe. Vashishta continued thus: "The individualized mind, which is avidya-full, formless, and all-pervading, though existing in name, has no form, either externally or internally, like the Akasha permeating everywhere. The mere manifestation in all objects of reality or non-reality therein is the mind. Wherever there is the Sankalpa, there does the mind exist. The form of the mind is Sankalpa alone. Both of them are identical. The multitudinous denominations of unreality, delusion, impurity, bondage, avidya, maya, tamas, and others are the fit synonyms of Sankalpa. With the annihilation of this Sankalpa, all conception of the differences between the seer and the seen will vanish, and then the reality of Brahman will begin to shine unintercepted. Then this shadow of all the universe, movable and fixed, will be found absorbed in it in a non-dual state, though in another sense they cannot be said to commingle with it. Then consciousness alone will shine without the reflections of a glass. If all the heterogeneous differences of objects arising through the conception of the mythical I and you are controlled, and even a scintilla of the visibles be completely destroyed beyond resurrection, then such a destruction is itself the certitude of kaivalya, or salvation. The time for the mind's destruction, like a dream generating another dream in it, the mind having no visible form, will generate non-existent visibles. Not resting on any object firmly, it is characterized by an excessive, fluctuating power. It will fluctuate and be confused, will flit away from an object and then return to it, will rejoice jubilant and vain and be intoxicated with ahankara, or egoism. But at the period of Mahapralaya, which alters the form of everything, Akasha, etc., will be absorbed in their highest essence, and there will remain the solitary all-quiescence of jnana. This is the primeval Brahman, the one reality which is the sun of never-setting self, jyotis, effulgence, limitless and not in the least painless, which is the all and the evoluter of all, and is in all places and times, and which is all-pervading. Though above the reach of all words, it is yet dubbed with different illusory appellations by the wise. The most intelligent Sankhyas term it Atman. The Vedantins of pure jnana call it Brahman. The Vijnanis say it is Vijnana. The atheists give it the pseudonym of void, and so on. But this much may be said of it, that it is the light of the sun's light, illumines all and shines as the abstract light only. From this principle which is firmly tacked to the world and the body and yet is not, and which seems to talk, examine, hear, see, eat, and think, a jnana light arises, like light from the sun. Now this light of consciousness pervading the Akasha has the manas full of vasanas as its root, the organs as the flowers, the mundane eggs as the fruits, and Maya as the ground on which to take root. With these, it enacts its affairs in the Puryastaka body, like a gem in a casket. Atman's nature. Being the immaculate jnana, it is the all-pervading Akasha itself. Whatever objects it contemplates upon, those objects come into existence at once. In that jnana, all three worlds will arise and be destroyed like water in a mirage. Having evolved all objects, it will yet be in its true state unaffected, as if disconnected with them. The origin and absorption of the universe do not take place from and into Nirvikalpa Atman direct. If one should hold communion with that supreme principle, devoid of mental fancies and modifications, then the great bondage of the mind will cease, all doubts will vanish, and all karmas will perish. How all can enter into Brahman? Here Rama asked Vashishta thus, I may rather believe the entire Mahameru mountains to enter a mustard seed than the whole of Brahma's egg to merge into Brahman, which is said to be the atom of atoms. To which Vashishta, of rare tapas, replied thus, This doubt of yours can be removed only after a study of Atma-jnana Shastras, and the association with the wise for a number of months and not days. The conclusion of all Shastras points to this only. Those who have with great pains understood clearly this abstruse account of evolution, etc., go into Samadhi, and who through it attain a direct cognition of the all-full jnana, will reach the supreme state of the Jivan Mukta, devoid of this illusory universe, though existent to others. And then this Jivan Mukti state is no other than the Vidaha Mukti state, the progress to the latter state being a mere matter of course. Then Rama asked the Muni to enlighten him as to the efforts that should be made by him to tread the path laid down by the Shastras to attain the Jivan Mukti and the Videha Mukti states. Vashishta replied thus, "Such persons, though moving in worldly objects, do not participate in them like the Chidakasha, which, though permeating all objects, yet appears not to be so to our visible eyes. Such Jivan Muktas are persons of transcendental nature in the enjoyment of eternal bliss. They are immaculate, like Akasha, and undefiled by love and other desires, though associated with their modifications. Whether performing karmas or not, they are not enmeshed by them, as they have no egoism. Though acting up to the worldly observances of life, they remain cool and unaffected by them, like utter strangers. Notwithstanding the possession of a full shining mind and attention, they have not the least of longings for objects. The certitude of their conviction is of such a nature that they neither sink under any load of grief nor rejoice at any pleasures. They are in that undisturbed state of mental equilibrium when they enjoy the Jagrat, waking state, or the Sushupti state in Jagrat, devoid of all vasanas. Neither are they afraid, nor do they instill fear into the hearts of any in the universe. The great ones who conduct themselves thus are called the Jivan Muktas, and do not break loose from the bonds of samsara, though in possession of minds, since their minds are above the worldly things. And Videha Muktas. Now about the Videha Mukti state. Should the above certain state be bridged and the body perish, then one will attain salvation in a disembodied state, like the all-permeating air in the immovable Akasha. Its nature is such that it is imperishable, unveiled, invisible, remote, endless, and fluctuationless. It is neither I nor any others, nor anything else we know of. It is neither light nor darkness, nor motion nor evidence, nor gunas nor the heterogeneous objects of the world compounded of the five elements. May you, through discrimination, cognize clearly and unfailingly that non-dual state which is in the midst of, or above the knower, knowledge, and the known, being the all-full reality, neither rupa form, nor arupa non-form, neither sat being, nor asat non-being, and yet one. On being questioned by radiant Rama as to clear elucidation of Brahmic reality replete with Chidananda, conscious bliss, in order that jnana may develop in him to the uttermost, Muni Vashishta went on thus. During the period of Mahakalpa, the cause of all imaginable causes, viz., the Brahmic reality, shines alone. If the modifications of the mind which lean to sensual pleasures be destroyed, then Atman, divested of its ahankara, egoism, becomes the unnameable Brahmic or the all-pervading reality. The jivic consciousness, which does not regard as real the universe before it, may truly be stated to be Brahman itself. A mind, though enjoying the diverse objects, does not yet enjoy them, may be stated to be Brahman itself. That consciousness, which is a witness to all thoughts of objects, the light of the sun, etc., mind, and the other visibles, may be said to be Brahman itself. This principle may be said to be the long yoga sleep devoid of end, dream, or non-intelligence. It is that from which evolve and into which merge the trinity of the knower, knowledge, and the known. It is the immutable, Janakasha, and not the Buddhi Kasha, composed of the elements. The internal state of self-cognition devoid of the modifications of manas, muni, and chitta, and being as imperturbable as a block of wood, may also be likened to that Brahmic reality. When Brahma, along with Vishnu, Rudra, Sadashiva, Deva, Indra, Sun, and others absorbed during Pralaya, this one fount of omniscience, viz., the Brahmic reality free from the base upadhis, or the vehicles of matter, etc., and devoid of the desires of the universe, would alone shine effulgent, stainless, all full, and ever blissful.